Hey guys, welcome to Mr. Smith's Kitchen. Brian, Mr. Smith Kitchen, as always. And today, I think we're going to do a apple gingerbread cake. This cake I got from Joy of Baking, a YouTube channel, also a website, Stephanie Jaworski's website and YouTube channel, and she pretty much taught me how to bake. I had not, my baking skills were very poor and very limited before I started watching her channel, and she really got me into the baking thing. You know, her and another channel called Preppy Kitchen, and I cannot remember his name to save my life at the moment, but those were the two channels I pretty much watched to learn how to bake, and I'd like to think I've been fairly successful at it. You know, they kind of taught me the ins and outs and how things worked. I mean, there were a couple other channels I've seen along the way but they've been primarily the two that have got me where I needed to go. So when she did this cake, which she just did it a week or two ago, I think, there were a ton of options, and I opted to do some of those options, and I think it'll turn out okay. I really do. At least in my mind, I can taste it, you know, in my head, if that makes any sense. But anyhow, that being said, if this is your first video and you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. I hope you get something out of this video and possibly check out some of my other videos. If you're returning, thank you. I appreciate it. If you are a new subscriber, awesome. Welcome. If you are new, you know, our channel is basically being a good neighbor through food, you know, and being respectful, and, you know, making friends by making a dish. You know, nothing here is really healthy that we make, but it is all home cooked from scratch. Very rarely do we add any store-bought stuff as far as like you know, packaged things. Obviously, like in this case, baking soda and baking powder come from the store, but you know, it's very limited. And we try to promote that, being a good neighbor and a good friend, through food and principles. You know, much like how I run my bakery and how I manage my restaurant. You know, those are the things I do. That being said, don't forget to hit like, you know, subscribe, share the video. Check us out on Facebook, on our Facebook group, Mr. Smith's Kitchen. Me and my wife are on there almost every day in some form of capacity, even if it's just to talk, answer questions, you know, hang out on our own pages or whatever. But, you know, we're there, and that way you can, you know, if you do have questions or want to share a recipe, you can do it that way too. By liking and subscribing, and, you know, or disliking, either way. You know, if you dislike, that means we did something wrong, or I did something wrong, and that would be cool if you'd comment and let me know, or if you have a pleasant comment, you know, comment either way. I respond to all of them. With measurements on this cake, much like all my other cakes, pies, cookies, and anything else we make on the channel, I will give you the measurements in cups, tablespoons, teaspoons, but I also give them in grams and milliliters. That way everybody can play along no matter what. So, that being said, let's go ahead and get down to the counter where we can start making this. Alright, I'll see you here in just a second. Alright, we are down here to the counter. Oh, be careful, honey. And if you are new to my channel, this is pretty much my whole kitchen. You're standing in front of the back door. And that is my youngest, Abby, getting in the fridge. She is getting a popsicle. Yeah. She's currently homesick. We've all kind of caught a bug, and she's on the tail end of it, and I think I'm at the first day one of it, which is horrible. So anyhow, things you will need to make this with. You will need a couple bowls. I've got a large mixing bowl. I've got a medium mixing bowl sitting off camera. One for dry, one for wet ingredients. A scale. I preach scales in every video. They are of the utmost for a couple reasons. A, it gives you consistency when you bake. It opens you up to more recipes, but let's say you decide to start baking for other people. That way, especially if, you know, they're paying you for that, you don't overuse, you don't underuse, you give them exactly what, you know, they're expecting. Scales are just important all the way around in baking. There are some recipes out there that if you don't have a scale, it'll never turn out right. Macarons are one of those. All right, so now that we got our basics, we need a whisk, a spoon, a rubber spatula. Now, first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna turn our oven on 350 degrees, which I've already done. And then you're going to take a springform pan, which I have never used in my life other than for cheesecakes, but we're gonna make a regular cake out of it. And I buttered it. You buttered the sides, buttered the bottom. You can use vegetable spray on it also if you want to. And then I put a piece of parchment paper down at the bottom. Now I don't know if I'm altogether sold on the parchment paper on the bottom with a springform, because I find them to be a bit of a pain in the butt to get the cake out with. But that's the way the recipe was written, so that's what we're gonna do. I try to do all the recipes as close to the original as possible for my first time. That way I can see how it turned out. But I've made gingerbread before and I've had apples, so I kind of got an idea. All right, that being said, oven's on, pan is prepped with butter and a parchment paper. We're gonna take our bowl. First thing we're gonna put in our bowl, which I already have in here, is 1.5 cups, 195 grams of all-purpose flour, just plain old regular flour that we use every day. And to this, we're going to add the things that I have on this plate. I have a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of baking soda. I have 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of baking powder. Those are both leaveners. There's what's going to give the cake the lift. I have a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of kosher salt. Now with kosher salt, it usually comes coarse grain. I run mine through a bullet blender, you know, or I mix it up with my pestle and mortar and pestle, to get a smaller grain. Inevitably, with the big grains, the coarse grains of salt, somebody will end up with a piece of salt in their mouth and they'll go, oh, I got a piece of salt. And then it's kind of, in my mind, kind of embarrassing. I also have 3/4 of a teaspoon, about 2 grams of cinnamon. I have a half a teaspoon, 1 gram of ginger. Now with the ginger and the cinnamon and the next 2 ingredients, these are guesstimates because my scale doesn't actually go that low. It doesn't go under a gram, and they popped at a gram, so I'm guessing. And then I've got some nutmeg, which wasn't in the original recipe. I got a 1/4 teaspoon, about a gram, half a gram to a gram of nutmeg. And then I've got 1/8 of a teaspoon or 1/4 of a gram of cloves. Cloves are the one thing you really want to pay attention to. They're very strong. It's an incredibly strong spice. Now, as far as those spices go, the ginger, the cloves, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, if you have a pumpkin spice that you like to use, you can. That is pretty much a pumpkin spice. The original recipe didn't have the nutmeg in it. I added it, but like I said, if you're following along with me and you have a pumpkin spice mix that you like to use, right there it is. And you would just put in 1 1/4, 1 1/2, about 1 3/4 of a teaspoon of pumpkin spice mix. My next thing I have is some lemon zest. And all I did was take my microplane and I took the yellow part. Let me put that in there real quick and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Because if you've never used a microplane before, nobody explained most of this stuff to me, not even on the YouTube channels that I watch. I just kind of learned as I went. And they always said they used a microplane, but what you're looking for is, if you see right there how that's that dark yellow, that is what you're wanting to get off. The white, or the light yellow in this case, is the rind, and that is very bitter. You can feel it as you're running across your microplane, you know, getting the zest off of it. You'll feel it when it takes all the zest off and it gets into that rind. You don't want the rind. It's horribly bitter. And then of course you can always save your lemon afterwards for something else. You know, and that way, you know, just put it in a bag so that way the skin doesn't dry out. But now that we've got all that stuff in there, we're just gonna whisk it together real quick with a whisk. All right, now that we got that whisked together, we're just gonna set it aside. The reason why we put our lemon zest in the dry and not in the wet, because it's wet, is we don't want it to clump up. If we put it in our wet mix, it will clump. We don't want that. All right, set that down behind me. Move my pan out of the way, and I'm sorry if you happen to hear the wind blowing and a howling over there. where you're standing. I got the window open. It's almost 70 degrees outside, and I hate to waste the day by not getting the breeze, but it's also incredibly windy. All right, so now we're going to work on our wet ingredients. And the first thing we're going to add to our smaller bowl is 2 eggs, 2 large eggs, and they are at room temperature. We're going to put those in, and we're going to give those a quick whisk. That way they're done. I guess it wouldn't matter in this case if you whisk them now or later, but I think eggs, once they're in the bowl, need to be beaten almost immediately. And to this, we are going to add some yogurt. Here is one variant, another variant that I did that is different from hers. She used plain full-fat yogurt. I am using a vanilla flavored yogurt. It's probably the only recipe I've ever seen of hers where she did not put vanilla in it, but I like the taste of vanilla, and I like the taste of the vanilla yogurt in everything I make. You will not find a recipe of mine that has yogurt in it that does not have that's not vanilla yogurt. And after that, we are going to throw in some oil. I'm using a vegetable oil. It's a half a cup, 120 milliliters. The yogurt was 3/4 cup, 180 milliliters. And the oil replaces the butter. So let's say you don't like a vegetable oil in your cakes. You can use butter for this, and it would be a half a cup, just like this, or a stick, 114 grams, to replace the oil. The beauty of the oil is this. Sorry. This cake has to be refrigerated because of the yogurt. Now you serve it at room temperature, but whatever's left over, or if you're waiting for your company to show up, making it a day ahead, you want to keep it in the fridge, and it's because of the yogurt. So if you use butter, your cake is going to get very stiff. You don't really want your cake to get stiff. It'll just take longer to get up to room temperature that way. But with the oil, it stays moist even in the fridge. All right, so the last of the next to last wet ingredients is 2 tablespoons, 30 grams of sulfur-free molasses. Grandma's Molasses, I think, is the name of the company that we use. It's the most common I've found on the store shelves at any rate. It is sulfur-free, and like I said, it's 2 tablespoons, 30 grams. Now, let's say you don't like molasses, or maybe you're someplace where molasses is hard to find. We're going to mix that in. You can use 2 tablespoons, 30 grams of honey as an alternative. Now, that being said, it will change the flavor of your gingerbread, obviously. Molasses is a very strong, almost syrup, but not syrup. I don't know how to explain molasses. It tastes like molasses. Where honey tastes like honey. So you'll have that, which would be kind of neat, really. It would almost be cool to make one of each and see what people think. But that is an alternative. It'll work the same. All right, it'll still keep the moisture in your cake. All right, so the very last ingredient to the wet is sugar. We are going to put 2/3 of a cup, 135 grams of granulated, just plain white sugar, like you put on your cereal or in your coffee, or whatever. And this container was still damp. Get all the sugar out of there. But it's just regular old granulated sugar. We'll get this mixed in. Now, let's say we're putting this all together and your mix looks curdled. And that happens on occasion, I guess, with this recipe. Mine is not looking curdled at all. It's actually looking quite smooth, but she did mention that it could look curdled. She said that's perfectly normal. It's not a big deal, and it'll go away as you add in the dry ingredients. All right, so very next step, we make sure on the right path. We whisked in the eggs, the oil, the yogurt, the molasses. We did the sugar. So now we need to take our dry ingredients, bring those back, and what we're going to do is we're just going to create a well in the center of this. right? We're going to bring all the ingredients out to the sides a little bit. And we will take our wet ingredients and we're going to pour that right in the well, right in the center. And all we're going to do, you can use a spatula and stir this together. I am just going to use my whisk since I got it right here. You just don't want to go crazy if you use your whisk. And you're going to start in the center and just kind of work your way out to the edges. Almost like you do when you make brownies. You know, because we're not looking to incorporate a lot of air into this. Yeah, we just want to get everything combined. Okay, we've got it well combined. You know, it's got a couple small lumps in it, no big deal. You know, you were just looking to get things, you know, try to get as much of the flour mix, sorry, I'm having a heck of a time talking, combined as possible so it's nice and smooth. So now we'll move our recipe out of the way, which if you're new to my channel, the recipe, I write it down in my book. If we like it, we keep it. If we can change it a little or to make it better or improve it in some way, I'll change it. If we can't, it's a horrible recipe all the way around, we just throw it out. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to simply pour our batter into our pan, just like such. Hold on for me 1 second. Okay, I am back. Did you miss me? I missed you. I know I was only gone a millisecond, but yeah, all the same. I had to get an offset spatula so I could scrape off my regular spatula here and get that off. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to Okay, so our timer just went off. Go ahead and get this opened up.
Motion detected at the front gate.
And it sounds like somebody's at my front door. Set that down there, but here is our cake in all its fame and glory. I think that looks awesome. But what we're going to want to do next, before we do anything else, is go ahead and toothpick test it. I'll run a toothpick down there, down through the center where the apples are, and over on this side, and all three of them came out clean, but I want to show you, if you can see it, I'm sure you can, see the crumb that's on it, but there's no batter. That's what we're looking for. And I don't know if you noticed that the top is slightly domed. Well, on a normal cake, we would just cut that, right? It is what we would do. but we can touch it and it's spongy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a paper towel, put it over the top, and I'm just going to push down on it ever so slightly. That way I don't damage the cake, but it will flatten it down even a little bit. So I don't even remember where I learned that at, but I know it works. That way, because it's still hot, so it's still doing its thing, but I want it to have a little more level surface. And now if you look at it, and by using a good paper towel, or if you have a lint-free towel, that won't happen. But now we've got a nice even, top on it. So what are we going to do next? I'm going to leave that sit there for a second, and I'm going to turn my oven on, broil on high. If you don't know what broil is, every oven has two heating elements, one at the top, one down at the bottom. The one at the top is for broiling, and all it does is simply crisps things on top. You can also make steaks that way. My great aunt used to make her steaks that way when we didn't cook them on the grill. So I'm going to wait a minute until that top element turns red. Once it is red, I am going to put my cake in there, and what I'm looking to do is, hold on for me now. Actually, I can probably just zoom you in, so to speak. Ooh, sorry. That's as close as we're going to get without setting everything back up again. But what I'm going to look to do when that turns red is see how all these apples are, well, maybe, they're still kind of white and pale. I don't want that. I want them to be a little brown, much like what we see. Everything's backwards on my viewer. What we see on the top. So I'm going to put this in, and it doesn't take long. So if you do this, you don't have to. This is just an extra added step to kind of give it that rustic look and make people think that you worked all day on this, when really this is one of the easiest cakes I've made to date for looking as fancy so far as it does. But don't walk away from it, because it's going to go from nothing to everything in a matter of like 2 minutes. So we'll go ahead and get that in there, because it doesn't take but about 30 seconds for that to start to warm up. And first thing we want to do is move our rack up a notch. I mean, you want it to be close to that top broiler, but not all the way. You don't want it to be smack up on it, about 6-8 inches off. And I'm going to leave mine cracked. Alright, so let me get this going about 30 seconds. Let me show you the setup I got going on here. See how I got it cracked? That's what I'm looking for. And I'm going to check it about every 10 seconds until I get the desired look I want. So when I come back, we'll take a look at it, and then we'll move on to making the apricot glaze that goes over the top of it. Literally, the whole thing from when you watched me put it in the oven to now took 2 minutes. But there we are. See how we got that nice golden brown on the apples now, and it darkened up the top real nice. So the last thing we got to do before we let this thing cool all together is let it cool for a few more minutes. We're going to let it cool just a little bit, because we're going to make our apricot glaze, but we don't want it to just start running all over the place. We want it to stay on the top. So we're going to leave it in the pan on the cooling rack, and we're going to let this cool for a few minutes. Meanwhile, we can make the apricot glaze. All I did was, since it's such a small amount of apricot preserves, was I just heated it up in the microwave. I did it in 15-second intervals, so that way we could watch it, make sure it doesn't explode. It's kind of like butter in that aspect. And I've got another cup here with a small strainer, and we're just going to pour this through the strainer to get the chunks of apricot out of it. Apricot. I tried to think of other preserves to go with this, and the only other thing I could think of that might go good with apple is like an orange marmalade heated up. But I went ahead and went with her recommendation, with Stephanie Jaworski's recommendation of the apricot preserves run through the strainer. Okay, we got it strained just like such, and all that's left is the apricots that are in there, and we've got a nice, little bit of a, sorry the light there, just a syrup basically. And to this, you have a couple options. I am adding a teaspoon of cognac to it, all right, the liquor. You can add just water to it if you don't like to have the liquor. You can have the liquor, or you can add brandy to it. But what this does, it thins it out, and adds a good flavor to it, if nothing else. I mean, if you're serving this to kids, I mean, it's completely up to you. We're serving it to our kids. That's not enough alcohol to do any damage, to your children. But that being said, it is completely up to you and your preference, obviously. All right, so let me go get the cake, and as soon as I get back, we will put this on. Okay, so we got our glaze is made. Our cake's cooled down just ever so slightly, but not very much. I mean, it's still, fairly warm. It doesn't take long to make this glaze, as you saw. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take our brush, and while it's still in the pan, we're not going to take it out of the pan yet, and we're just going to brush our glaze on, just like this. So I'm not quite ready to take it out of the pan yet. Matter of fact, okay, yeah, you can see what I'm doing. So we'll get our glaze on there. Alright, so we got our glaze on. I believe I hit all the spots. Just like such. And you know what? I was thinking I was going to leave this ring on. I'm not going to take it off its base yet till it's cooled down to room temp. But the more I sat here and thought about it while I was putting this glaze on, there's really no reason why we can't take the ring off before it's completely cooled. As it would be no different than taking a cake out of the oven, letting it set for 5-10 minutes, and then and then taking it out of the pan and letting it finish cool. So we'll go ahead and get that off, just the ring. I'm not going to take it off of the base till it's completely cooled. But let me grab this just in case the bottom's still hot. Oh, wait. I see a spot we missed. And it doesn't look like it's been glazed. Oh, no, we're still not done with it yet. I'm special sometimes, I swear. Now, I mean, your options again are kind of endless with the glaze. I am not going to I'm not going to put it on the side, but you most certainly could. That would be completely up to you. Oop. My apple moved. Alright, so we got the glaze on there, looking good, it's everywhere. The next thing we're going to do, the last thing we have to do, and this is an option. You don't have to do this. You could have stopped and not done the glaze, not done the broiling on it, but I thought the way she did that, it looked amazing. And so far, I think I'm right, or she's right, it does look amazing. I'm going to sprinkle some nuts on the top of it. I've got a 1/4 cup, 25 grams of walnuts that I roasted in the oven, right? I put them in the oven at 350 degrees for like 10 minutes. And when I buy, our supply of nuts from the store, because we got pecans, peanuts, walnuts, almonds, all that stuff. The almonds I don't, but pecans and walnuts, I toast them when we get them. I toast the entire container. what that does is it lets the brings out the oils and brings out the flavor of the nut. Now, if you are not one to use, walnuts, pecans, things like that a lot, or even peanuts for that matter, maybe you don't want to toast the whole thing, because then the oils that come out, they're only good for about a month. But I wanted my toasted walnuts on there, and like I said, it's about a quarter of a cup, 25 grams. And that is what we end up with right there. I think that looks fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this finish cooling down to room temperature. I'll go ahead and slide it off the parchment paper in the pan, and then we'll try a slice. All right, I'll be back here in just a little bit. Okay, we let her cool down a little bit. I'm not going to say it's completely room temperature, but it's pretty close. We get a good way to look there, but there we are in all our fame and fortune, right? I'm telling you, this being backwards thing is really screwing with me today. And I'm not sure why, but there we are at any rate. All I wanted you to do is have a good look at it. So let's go ahead and we'll get us a piece cut and see how it turned out. It looks great. My kitchen smells amazing, but like I have often said, that just means we're 2/3 of the way there. So we'll get our piece cut here. Oh, it cuts nice. It's absolutely gorgeous. Apple out of there. Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, look at that. You can't argue that if you wanted to. Nice clean slice. The only thing sitting in the center there is a piece of walnut, which we can take that out. Rude. We'll throw that on the top there. But there is our slice. That looks absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to argue that one bit. So all we got left to do now is, kind of see how it turned out. Okay, let's see how she tastes. I mean, really, we can give this a shot, and man. Yeah. That, wow. Excuse me while I have a second bite. That's like heaven. I'm not gonna lie. Holy cannoli. The gingerbread portion of it isn't heavy. The spices are just perfect in it, the amounts. The apple, I mean, you can taste it all right there. The gingerbread, the apple, the apricot. You can't really taste the cognac that's in the glaze at all. I actually can't taste it at all. I couldn't taste it at all. But, and for those of you who don't know, cognac is kind of like a wine. It's just processed a little differently and only done at a specific time of the year, which makes it's like a twice fermented wine in a way, only it's absolutely amazing and incredibly expensive. And like I said, you can use a brandy or just water to make that glaze. I really wanted to try that, and we had some cognac here from making other dinner dishes. So, but wow, try this. You won't go wrong. People are going to think you took all day to make this, or you bought this at a restaurant or a bakery. It is hands down. It's got, I don't want to say complex flavor, but complex flavors. And it was so easy to make, and it takes no time at all, and your friends are going to go, wow. And I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but we do have to keep this in the refrigerator. It's okay to bring it out for room temperature to serve, but you want to keep any of your leftovers in the fridge, and it'd be good for 3 or 4 days, I'm sure. But because of the yogurt, you want to leave that in the you want to keep it in the fridge so that way it doesn't spoil on you. Yogurt does have a tendency to spoil if it sits out too long, even when it's been cooked. It can get weird at any rate. So put it in your fridge, bring it out when you're ready to serve, and then that way you're solid. You can make it a day or so in advance, and I think you'd be fine. Just cover it up. Make sure you wrap it up, and you'll be good. So next week, I think we're for sure going to do some sugar cookies. I want to try, we haven't made them together. Now, me and Chris have made sugar cookies. It's no different than when we make our cutouts for Christmas. But we've never made cutouts together, let alone sugar cookies with a royal icing. So I think we're going to do that next week for dessert. Dinner, I have no clue what we're going to do yet. But that's okay, we'll figure out something to do. Sometime here in the next couple of days, I'm hoping to get a short video out that it's not necessarily food, but more on what are we doing to the basement, since I keep talking about it. Where's the new kitchen going to go? What are my ideas on what it's going to look like? What have I done so far? And because we have so many new people, we may start, I may just tell you a little bit about me. There's a lot of you that don't know me other than on YouTube. So, but we'll see. We'll try to get it out, but I make no promises for this week, maybe next. But until the next video, dinner or otherwise, I love you. I love you very much. And I mean that with all my heart, with the most sincerity. Tell somebody else you love them, that you love them very much. It's going to make them feel better. It's going to make you feel better. Both of you will have an amazing day, especially if you make them one of these apple gingerbread cakes. That's a conversation right there in itself, let alone a conversation to start with. So, till next week, I love you. Talk to you later. All right? Bye.